new. So I'm back again to trying something new. This is Bharat here. So welcome to my show. It's Saturday Night Fever Live, coming to you live from beautiful Bengaluru. And as you can, maybe you hear some background noise. There's some digging going on outside my house, but otherwise all's well in the world today. I hope you all have had a great Saturday. Uh, Good Saturday lunch, a good snooze, and hopefully you had some fun and you've got plans for the later part of this evening. So, welcome to the inaugural edition of Saturday Night Live, Saturday Night Fever Live with Bharat. This show is meant to be a conversation. So, I'm going to be getting guests on board who are people who I admire, who I respect, and I think you will get to know them too. And we're going to have conversations about all kinds of topics, but I'm going to be focusing pretty much on the business world and our world at large. And we will be talking about all kinds of topics. Today, of course, I've got my very good friend Prashanth, Prashanth Kumar. He is the director of the Volvo Cars India Tech Hub. And he's the founder member, I should say. He was employee number one who started the center up here in India for Volvo Cars. And he's grown the center pretty significantly over the last year and a half or two. They're doing some pretty amazing work, and I want to hear from him. And I'm sure you'd be interested in hearing about all of that stuff too. Besides that, we will also be talking a lot about his own growth. And we will talk technology, we will talk growth, and we will talk leadership as well. So hopefully you all enjoy the show. And please, sign in, send me your feedback, and let us know what you think and what you would like to hear and see. The format is we will do about 30 minutes or so with Prashanth in the conversation. And while we're doing that, please feel free to ask questions in the chat window. And, we'll do our best to try and answer as many of them as we can or get to them as many of them as we can. So with that, I'd like to welcome Prashanth. I know I can see you're online. Do join us.
Hi, Bharat. Good evening.
Hi, Prashanth. Good to see you.
Yeah, same here. And welcome to all the people who joined us. Thanks for joining us today. And Bharat, it's always I feel privileged to talk to you. And yeah, it's been a 20 years experience together. I think you have been constantly my mentor, and of late I'm also taking the coaching from you, which has really helping me in this journey to go to the next level.
Thank you. You're very
Thanks
kind.
for that.
You're very kind. Anyway, this show is about you. It's not about me. So let's make sure of that. Okay.
Thank you.
So just to introduce you all to Prashanth. Prashanth, I have known him for, as Prashanth was saying, more than about 20 years now. We started actually working together. He was one of my colleagues at GE when I came back to India to start up a center for the General Electric company at that time. So Prashanth was one of the people on our team. He was just absolutely fabulous. Always loved his energy, his passion, his enthusiasm for all things technology and all things people and and we'll get into some of the other things that Prashanth also does in a few minutes. So let me tell you a little bit about Prashanth as a professional. His journey started, many years ago, of course. He's a very seasoned senior IT executive in our industry. And he's grown through the ranks, through the technical ranks, and now he heads up he heads up this India Technology Center for Volvo Cars, as I was mentioning. He's worked in great companies like Monsanto. And what is really interesting about Prashanth's career has been the fact that he's done both the corporate gig, gone into startups, worked in startups and led startups for a very large, for a significant part of his career. And now he's back again at Volvo Cars. He's a absolutely terrific guy to get to know. So with that, Prashanth, let me jump right into it. So that was going to be my first question, actually. And, the conversation I was hoping we'd have is what's with this moving from the corporate into the startup and back into the corporate? Can you help us understand a little bit of that?
Sure, Bharat. I think I always believed in challenging myself and working with interesting people, right? So I always believe the best way to learn is learn from people, collaborate, and understand. And maybe in last 1 decade, I have seen that slowly there's a change in the industry where a lot of digital disruptions are happening and digital innovation, digital businesses are coming up, which also included a lot of smart people working in the startups and coming with a lot of interesting solutions. And after 16 years of corporate experience, somewhere I was feeling I'm missing some interesting things happening in the world.
Okay.
So that is where I took a decision to move out of established startups. And I think when I moved out, I was doing a role of vice president in Edelweiss and heading the IT for one of the business in Edelweiss in
Wow.
Mumbai. And
That
when
must have been,
I
that must have been quite a step, right? I mean, from pretty established companies to drop everything and move into the startup world. How did your family and how did you feel about it, more importantly?
see, there are two ways to look into it. See, one, if you attach yourself into materialistic comfort and attach ourselves too much into title, position, companies, then I think it's very difficult to do these kind of journey. But when you truly want to learn something, of course you have to take some calculated risk. You have to also make sure that you have something to piggyback on where like your decent lifestyle is taken care. But I strongly believe this 2 years of 2+ years of startup experience, what I've gone through, made me more real and made me more, I can say, even more humble and connect to people. And things like, see, when we work for the established companies, had fantastic experience with GE. I think, as you mentioned, we all worked together and had a great experience and worked with great leaders, right? And but what happens in established companies usually you fly business class, you stay in five-star hotels, and things will come to you. Like the company does everything to take care of you. It's nice of those companies,
Right.
but world is not only that. There's much more in the world. There's a little bit of sometimes a real world which we get shielded when we are in corporate. So that
Right.
is what helped me in the startup world. Things like carrying the printers to the medical shops and
Yeah,
standing
I
with
was
them
going
for
to ask you
morning
that
till
because I
evening.
remember you had
Yeah,
mentioned this some time
yeah.
ago, actually, when we were talking. So tell us a little bit about that startup experience that you had. What was that like? I mean, how did it feel to what were you doing? What were the kinds of work that you were doing? And give us a little bit of color on your experience.
Sure. See, there are two startups I have been associated with. One was more into we were giving a retail, the POS-based, Android-based POS solution to the medical shops in India. So just to put some perspective, there are around 800,000 medical shops across India. Most of them don't have a system to bill or use the data, how they can connect the value chain from end to end. They don't have a system. And even the
Okay.
people who are having systems are maybe old Visual Basic or huge computers, which a lot of medical shops find it very difficult to uh, work on or maybe the invest on, right? So that is where this the startup which I worked with, which was promoted by one of my previous leader, Meena, who worked with me, with whom I worked 8 months. And so then what happened was uh, he was one of the guys there. So that is why like
Hmm.
I got into that, and
Okay.
the experience was amazing going to the retail shops and understanding what is their business model, how they do the billing, what is their real need, and there are 10 patients standing there, right? So people coming to medical shop, usually people don't come there with a happy mood. 99% of the people coming there, either one of their loved ones are in the hospital, need medication.
Hmm.
So you
Yeah.
can't make them stand for a long time for the billing process. So you
Sure.
can't explain them you have a process and all. Things should happen quickly. So there's a lot of learning, right? And
But
also these
that's
people are not,
sorry. No, no. Please go on. Please go on.
yeah, these people are not very tech savvy also. Like they don't understand a lot of things. So there are enough number of times I take customer calls, some customer is yelling and saying, I'll throw your system to the road. I'm not able to use this system. So I'm gonna take it back, right? So
So,
it is a very different world. They are not bad, but
right.
they are the kind of people who are not used to it. And once
Right.
you go with them and live their world, then only you will understand what is the reason for their
Right.
frustration.
I'm
I
going to
can tell.
ask you to pause for a minute there. I just want to make sure that our viewers are able to hear audio. I'm seeing some comments that audio is not available. Can somebody please type up whether you're able to hear this or not? It'd be great to hear from our audience if everything is working or not working. Yeah. Sorry about that, Prashant. This is part of the thing. In fact, I was going to talk to you about this is, the concept of the customer experience, right? Because customers are end customers, at least the experience, people want seamless experiences, right? You don't
Yes,
want to have to sit through and jump through a whole bunch of hoops because,
yes.
of whatever reason. So, what was it that you learned from in the corporate world and in the startup world? And can you compare and contrast a little bit about that?
Sure. See, as I mentioned, if you really look into what customer expects, whether it is in the corporate world or the startup world, as you rightly mentioned, customer expects a seamless operation, and whatever you're committed, it works as expected. And you understand their world. That's what customer expect, wherever it may be, right? So that was a first analogy I can draw. But in the
Okay.
startup world, it is little different because you work with some customers outside your organization, and they are buying your solution or they're betting on you, thinking their life will become better, and it has to happen better. But in corporate, at times you may get little leeway because customers are your own employees, and sometimes they may be like your distributor, so they understand you are paying little bit. So that kind of little bit of understanding you'll find more in the corporate world. In the startup world, it would be very straightforward. So customer feedback, you don't have to run a NPS survey to find a feedback. It will come every hour. So that's the one of the thing I could tell you. But
Super.
what helped me was some of the people skills what I learned over my experience of corporate, right? So and understanding people, listening to people, and treating people with a lot of fairness and respect, and trying to always like not just go with what is happening in front of me. Just understanding where the context is coming from, why some
Right.
people are behaving like that. Some of these skills, what I learned over the corporate, helped me a lot in startup. And
It's
then some of
it's
this,
it's
sorry,
very
go ahead.
interesting you bring this up because this is something that I'm extremely passionate about is like, treat people the way you want to be treated. In fact, one of my favorite sayings is from the Bible, as a matter of fact. It's do unto others as you would have them do unto you. Now, I've noticed that, in many organizations today, some organizations do it better than others, but in many organizations today, one of the things that I've noticed is that, people for a very large reason are not, how shall I say this without sounding too nasty about it? But people today in many organizations are not don't seem to be given the respect and the space that they deserve. What I mean by that is sometimes, all of us want to be recognized. All of us want to be able to have our talents out there and have an opportunity to be able to display our talents. What are some of the things that, we could do as leaders of organizations that could actually start to create that kind of atmosphere? And what are your thoughts on, whether this is happening, not happening? Is it important, not important?
No, I think, see, if you look across the world now, that is a need of the hour to make sure that your existing employees who joined the organization thinking that they will stay here for long term and they will learn and they will grow. It's more important in today's environment to invest, and it was always important, but now it is more important because see, there's a kind of talent war going on. Like, let us accept this fact. Like, if you're hiring one good person, he'll be having 5 or 6 offers. It's very difficult to tell where he or she is going to join,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
So, and every company is now striving to go through a digital transformation, new ways of working, innovation. They want to, like implement automation. Many things are happening. From
Right.
where you will find people to do all this, the best people are your own people. Invest on them and make sure that as an organization,
Mm.
we are very clear as leaders what we want to achieve. Then create a proper plan to upskill our people and help people to go where they want to go. Again, when I say upskilling, I think a lot of organizations have seen that
Sure.
you will have a huge universities, huge courses, huge training materials, do this, do that. That's not the real upskill. You need to have a plan. Like, for example, today I'm working as a data engineer, and tomorrow, if I have to become a data scientist, and if I have to work more on AI, ML, and these sort of things, it's a journey. There is a
Right.
proper, like technology upgrade is required, business acumen is required, and the domain understanding is required. There should be a proper plan. I would say
Right.
now it's all the more important for all the corporates to think.
All right. So that's absolutely fantastic. But one of the gaps that I found, and this is, I'm an old fart, so I've been around for a long time. But one of the things that I've observed is that, from the early years in my career, where we were kind of sort of the pioneers of information technology, so to speak, in our industry in India, to the midpoint of the career when we had the boom times of, the 2005, 2007. Those are the boom times again, and then going down again to, the later part of the decade and the new century. I found distinct changes in the way organizations and people have been treated, I mean, are being looked at, right? Especially in large organizations. I'm sure the atmosphere in startups is pretty different. But especially in large organizations, one of the things that I found is that there has been a gradual tendency to start to look at employees as resources. And this is where, I have a big objection to this word human resources, right? Much maligned. Everybody's got their favorite story about HR, so to speak. To all, apologies to my HR brethren out there. I love you all. I believe many of you have got, a lot of good stuff to say, but I think there is a gap when we start to think about people as resources rather than looking at people who can contribute to an organization, right? And I wanted to hear from you. What are some of the things that you would say would be some ideas or best practices that you think, large organizations especially should be looking at and should be looking to do?
Yeah. See, I think I can maybe tell you. You asked me a question why I came back from startup to Volvo Cars, right? See,
Yeah.
one of the reason for me to come back to Volvo Cars was the kind of people whom I interacted with, and the kind of the assignment, and kind of the digital transformation what company was doing.
Okay.
So I can tell you some of the things what you mentioned. I'm sure there are a lot of other organizations who are doing it. I'm not saying that Volvo Cars is the only company. So we have stopped calling people as resources. We don't have HR function. We have a PX function. That is people experience. We
I
don't call
love
it
that.
HR.
I love
Yeah,
that.
yeah,
People
yeah.
experience.
Yes, right.
Hear that, folks.
And
Hear that. I think that encapsulates it. In the digital transformation world, we keep talking about customer experience. I think this is definitely something that we need to do to transform also is the people
true,
experience. Sorry, please carry
true.
on.
Yeah, and also the kind of culture what this company had set, like always people first, that is truly practiced here. So these are some of the things I can tell you with my recent experience of 2.5 years with Volvo Cars. I can tell you a lot of things this company has done well. And as I mentioned, I'm not saying that it's the only company. There are many more companies doing the right things. But we should like this word resource. I completely agree. We are humans. We are not one more computer or notebook or the pen or pencil, right? So we are there with people, we are emotions. So it has to be resource world is not a very good way of looking into it. And also there's a very conscious effort in the leadership to make sure that when people fall into the bad, the
Mhm.
old habit of calling resource, I need 10 resource, 15 resources, we are carefully correcting people, no resources, people or team members or the
Super.
expertise, right? So that is one thing we are carefully doing from our side. And I think uh, thanks to COVID, one change what I'm observing in the industry is a lot of companies are really realizing the value of people,
Ah, interesting.
right? Yeah, because yeah, I work with, I don't want to name them because I don't know whether it's appropriate to name them as a partners we have. I don't know whether it's a,
No, that's fine.
open information, but I work with four really big organizations of India. We collaborate together and we bring cross collaboration. I see compared like 2.5 years back when we started, and today we they look at their people and their retention strategy, or maybe their strategy to uh, upskill people has changed because everybody realized that 30-40% attrition is not something which is healthy for the organization. And also, I asked this question to somebody, some of the senior leaders. Okay, you're ready to hire people with 45 minutes of 2 or 3 interviews
Right.
and maybe give a 100% salary raise, but you're not interested in retaining some of your good people and really ask them what is that some small things you can do which will retain them. So
Hmm.
some of these kind of thought-provoking discussions have already started, and I see companies are started looking things in a pretty different way now.
Fantastic. Fantastic. Thank you for that. Though I'm going to switch gears a little bit here, right? So one is we've talked a lot about people and approaches and philosophy to people. Now, in the process, you've brought up things like digital transformation, newer technologies. Where do you see or how do you see organizations now leveraging those, or people having to develop or come up with those skills and those capabilities required to live in a digitally transformed world or digitally transformed organization? And first and foremost, by the way, digital transformation has been a much misused phrase and word, I think, right? Pretty much anything that anybody else does is now considered a transformation. Transformation's become a much used word, much misused, abused, and used. So, what, in your perspective, is digital transformation? And can you give us some examples of some of the things that you guys are trying to do, maybe in Volvo Cars or even in any other organization
See,
that you've been a part of?
yeah. See, when you say about digital transformation, for me it is you are completely changing the ways what you're working your business model, and you're enhancing it significantly in such a way that it will suit the new age market. If you take our Volvo car example, we are moving away from traditional cars and becoming more electric, or looking at more
Sorry, could you say
sensible.
that again?
We are
Moving away?
becoming more moving away from the traditional technologies and becoming more electric cars. Or
Okay,
maybe we are looking more at how we can increase the presence of sales in online, right?
okay,
Across the world. So these
right.
are some of the big bets our CEO has committed to the world.
Hmm.
So I think every company has their own such digital big bets where like they are working on some of the bigger digital agenda. But
Right.
now the more interesting thing is who should achieve this? Who should go behind this? It's at the end of the day, your leaders, your and leaders getting the proper vision and taking the people along with them and taking the teams along with them to execute. So any digital transformation for me at the end of the day, it clearly a people, process, and technology. First is people. Like your people see
Hey,
this as
you're
a
stealing this concept from what we were talking about when we were at GE. Come on.
but
No,
I
that's good.
think it's
Okay,
one more
sorry.
interesting thing you are saying. Fundamentals are not changed. It's only the way we are implementing and the way we look at things have changed. Leadership, like even today, say when I go back to GE days, what I was expecting from my you or like Chandra and a lot of others as my leaders, what I was expecting from them, and today what I expect from my leader is same, but
Hmm.
it may be different. The maybe the way I expect it may be very
True.
different.
True. Very true. Very true. So I'm going to come back to you with a couple of questions. I was reading this fantastic article on the Harvard Business Review. In fact, I'll share that with you after this session. They've come up with they did a research across, I think it was 80 large corporations or corporations around the world. And unfortunately, ladies and gentlemen, startups were not a part of it. So I think there's a huge part of the segment that is missing. And this was about what are some of the pillars of digital transformation. Okay. And I'm going to share this with you all as an audience. There are four clear buckets that they define. All right. One is what they call IT uplift, which is essentially got to do with modernizing your existing IT, right? To be able to prepare the ground, so to speak, for transformation. Then the second pillar, has got to do with digitization of operations, where you're taking existing operational and optimizing your existing business. Right. The third bucket is digital marketing. And this is very interesting because the digital marketing side of it has got to do with everything got to do with customer acquisition and customer building. And this is where the customer experience element that everybody talks about comes in. Right. And then the last bucket is really new ventures where you're taking your business truly digital, like what I think I heard you saying about Volvo moving more to EV technologies and other technology additives into their cars. Some of the other experiences that you guys are trying to do as far as your customer experience is concerned, with higher emphasis on the interface or the experience to customers to be able to do purchases online. So these are the four buckets, and it's interesting here. Let me just also tell you, the key part for each of these pillars is the sponsors that they're talking about. So when you take a look at IT uplift, no guess there. The sponsor, the C-suite sponsor, is the CTO or the CIO. For digitizing operations, this is very interesting because up to now, when we've talked about digitizing operations, it's still been the job of the CIO. What they're saying is best practices indicate that it's the CFO or the COO who actually becomes the sponsor for that. And in digital marketing, obviously, is the CMO. And for all new technologies, where existing with for the core of the business, it's the CEO. So it's very interesting to see that, for the longest time, we were always talking about the CIO, CTO becoming, partners with the business and so on. But here in digital, when we talk about digital and digital transformation, I'm actually seeing the CIO role moving back a little bit, more towards an operationalizing and managing IT and infrastructure. How does that how does that sound to you? Does that make any sense?
But that makes perfect sense because if you see how industry is going, like if you see last 20, 25 years phenomena, right? So next 5 to 10 years, you will not have many roles. This operation lead, team leader, senior team leader, monitoring expert. You're not going to have all these roles. You are going to have a role of a real technology expert who can automate business processes, who is a really developer. And you're going to have the role of people who can own the product ownership, where they can completely own the end-to-end product, like how the product roadmap. And then you will have these roles of what you spoke, some of the senior executives, like who will work with the business and who lead own some of the business processes. Plus, they understand technology, and then they will make sure that the plan is there in place to automate as much business processes and business opportunities possible.
Super.
Right? So
Yeah.
that is where industry is going, and I think all of us who are in the technology industry today, we have to go there. One more interesting thing I will tell you. If you take a step back, I read it somewhere. If you take a step back and think about it, there is
Yeah.
no longer domain company existing. All are software companies. For example, if you think about
That's
Volvo cars,
could you say that
Volvo car,
again? Because I want our audience to hear this again. Please say what you
yeah.
just said to me.
See, I was saying like nowadays with the new digital technology and way of we are operating, there is no bank or no manufacturing company or there is no retail company. Everything is a software company. For example, a bank is a software company with banking license, and a
Super.
retail company is like a software company with the compliance needs or the licenses are taken care to sell the products.
That's
But
fantastic.
everything works on software.
What so beautifully put, because it then pivots the whole thing around to saying that, hey, the true enabler of working with your customers and building your market has got a foundation in software, and you're actually providing services on top of those platforms, which is what I think a lot of companies are doing right now, right? I mean, if you take a look at all the merchants, whether it's e-commerce or even fintech or edutech, that's essentially what they're doing, right? I mean, they're creating the platforms on which the various services
Yeah.
are actually offered, the physical service that is necessary to get that. It's phenomenal.
Forget about big companies, Bharat. Now you just think about maybe a small retail shop next to your house. He depends on WhatsApp and Facebook for business now. Like he has his customer base in WhatsApp, and you place your orders on WhatsApp, right?
Right.
So if you think about it, where the world is going, I think technology is no longer a fancy or a
Right.
differentiator. It is a need. So I think that is where all of us going forward. This is what I think again an interesting thing. Like we'll talk a little bit more about our education system and how we are not preparing people who can be employed for the future need. So this is precisely the thing. So technology is going to play a major role in any industry, any organization, in anybody's life. Think about our banking, right? So we remember the days where we used to go to bank and stand in the queue along with our parents and do few things, right?
Right.
And
Right.
write it in the passbook and come back. Now you tell me when was the last time you went to bank?
Probably never. It's been
And
it's been months.
yeah,
Maybe
and I'll also ask you
months.
a question. Did anybody teach you how to use, maybe if you're using say like ICICI, did anybody teach you how to use ICICI app or how to use ICICI website? Did anybody
Absolutely.
teach you?
You're absolutely right. And that's what again brings me back to the point of the experience, right? If
Yes,
the
sir.
experience is effective, adoption automatically follows, right? It's fundamentally got to do with the experience. So, we're no longer in what, everybody still talks about the knowledge economy. I believe we're not in the knowledge economy anymore. I think we're in the experience economy.
True.
We are actually marketing and selling experiences. We're not selling products, we're not selling services, we're selling experiences. And then once that experience is set, you can put anything else, you can stitch anything you want onto that experience. Fabulous. So I'm going to pause over here for a minute and I want to switch gears, Prashanth, with you. Awesome discussion, by the way. Thank you. Thank you so much for
Thank you.
sharing
Thank you.
and this thing. But I'm going to switch gears. You got to tell the audience about what are the other things that you're doing with your life, because I know you're doing a ton of other things. And I know what you and Deepthi, your wife, are also doing. So could you please share some of that with us?
Sure. So I think I can still tell you at heart, by heart, I'm still a artist. So I love music and trying to do my best in music and learning classical music and trying to get to a level of my wife. She's a much better singer than me. I'm trying to get there. She is also like by education engineer, work for software company, and it's amazing. After 5 6 years, she followed her passion
Yeah,
and she went for music. And again, following passion, we spoke about it further. It's important to make sure that when you follow the passion, we cannot blindly follow the passion. There should be some backup. So that is where I'm the backup, making sure that the basic things are taken care of.
sure, sure.
On the serious note, if I look into my all corporate journey, I always keep telling people, the junior people especially, saying that keep some interesting hobbies, right? So it
Yeah,
is very, very important. Otherwise, if your life becomes only work, thinking about what will happen tomorrow, what kind of politics going on, when I will get my next promotion, what next. If you don't have any other interesting things in life, I think it kills you. It also will not help you to grow and help you to do the right things. So
I
that is why
fully, I
that
agree.
is why I always kept made sure that even at some times we are in the corporate. Sometimes we have to work late nights or we have to stretch ourselves, everything. But once that time is done, I have my own things to do. There are enough things. Office is not the only life, right?
Super.
So that is why I kept
I
all this
think,
interesting
and this is
music,
advice, and this is advice, ladies and gentlemen, coming to you also from a guy like me. I can tell you that, what Prashant says is absolutely dead on. In my 35 years, for me, it was always an off and on with my interests, and I have a variety of interests. But I can also tell you this that, by not pursuing some of the interests that I had, I know I got more frustrated and more stressed out because of not having a release of my own that I was looking for. So please, 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 I cannot say this to you enough, is please take care of yourselves first in whatever form, right? You want to go work out, you want to develop a hobby, you want to go do volunteer work, do something completely different from your work. This is a piece of advice that never going to grow old, and it's free. So take it, use it, and enjoy it. So
yeah.
I'm going to call a pause right now because I'm seeing some very interesting questions coming up from our audience. So, audience, this is your opportunity to jump in with questions. So, I'm going to start you off with a couple of questions here, Prashant. Um, yeah, this is a very interesting one. This is from Kripa, and she asks, as a leader, what are some resources you would suggest to your team members to improve performance and innovation?
Yeah. So very, very good question. See, when I speak to my team members, I always ask them in the organization framework, what is that something interests them, what they want to do, rather than just like giving them some general gap. I always feel we should spend some time in understanding what is the personal development plan, what they want to follow. In some organization, we have a good template from PX. In some organization, like we need to have that conversation. So if somebody comes and tells me, like today I'm doing this, but I want to, like go there. And if
Mhm.
somebody tells me a title saying that today I'm a software engineer, I want to become senior software engineer. My first response to that person is I don't want to talk about that. I just want to talk about what you want to do, what you are doing today, what you want to do tomorrow, right?
Yeah,
It may need some of the clear technology learning. It may need some of the clear behavioral soft skills or the process learning. So we will put together a plan,
So can you
and I will make.
give us some examples for our audience in terms of what you would advise them to say, look at from or develop capabilities in some of the hard stuff on the technology side and some of the soft stuff in terms of whether it's communication or presentation? Could you suggest to our audience a
Sure,
couple
sure.
of things?
Yeah, I think Bharat, you know it much better than me. Like any adult learning happens by 70-20-10 rule. That is 70% by doing, 20% by collaborating with your seniors and learning, and 10% by the formal certifications and all those kind of things. This is the first rule I would say. Like if you want to grow, do something. Take an assignment. And
Mm,
for example, if somebody says, I am working on operation functions today, but I want to get into data. I want to learn more about data space. I want to grow in the data space. Then we will sit together and say, okay, what kind of technologies we are using? Okay, today we are all moving to cloud. It's more about the Azure, some of the technologies in Azure. Start learning there. And then, like start working with the teams who are already working on that and take a small assignment and do that assignment and learn. That would be much more powerful learning than learning from, like only reading or other stuff. And when you look into the platforms today, like starting from Udemy to Coursera to Flura sites to the Udacity, there are like upgrades, there are 100 platforms available. I
right,
think every organization I think has a clear plan which platform they will work with and they will support their employees. So that support is already there. As I
right.
mentioned, now organizations have already realized it's important for them to invest on these things. So my suggestion would be very clear about what you want to do
Right.
and sit together with your leader and put a plan in place and take it up. That is on the
So
technology learning.
one of the things I've done in in my previous experience that I found really works is I used to one of the things that I used to try with my employees and my teams was that every week or through the week, a few hours every day was given to the employees for them to go out and do their own crazy science lab, mad science lab using organizational resources. So, you had access to cloud, you had access to all the latest and greatest technology, you had access to everything. And then you could go ahead and, just experiment and build stuff. And I found that that was something that, especially for guys like us, right, who are in fundamentally at heart, we are guys who want to fiddle and tinker and make things, right? And I found that that was something that was very exciting that people did. So, gaining knowledge and gaining experience through doing, I don't think there's any substitute for that. To actually
True.
go out and play with technologies and try
Yes.
new stuff, right?
Yes.
All right,
I think good. If you look into any
sorry,
good
I'm going to jump
organizations,
in and
Bharat.
get you another question.
Okay.
I don't want to miss out. There's so many good questions out here. This is a question from Vignesh. How did you go about building teams? What were you looking for when hiring?
It's a very interesting question. I will try to give a more summary answer. So I think my first preference is always attitude. I look at attitude to learn. I look at the attitude to collaborate, and I look at the attitude of gratitude. Like somebody who is, like
Hmm.
really thankful to what they have and thankful to, like what the kind of blessings they are getting. So when people have these kind of clear approaches, and then along with that, when it comes to technology, if their fundamentals are right, so today if you're a Java programmer, and we are going to work more on Node.js or Python and all those kind of things. I may not expect you to know all these three things, but if you're programming, yeah, if your programming concepts are clear, if you're a strong developer, then I'll definitely hire you for that role.
Super.
Attitude and then having the right basic skills.
So you're like many of us, or not many of us, like some of us out there who say that hire for attitude and train for skills.
Yes.
Would you guys be willing to invest in people like that who have a great attitude and they come with some skills, of course. I'm not with no skills. And you make the investment, you'd be willing to make the investment in them? Excellent.
Yes, I think Bharat, maybe on a lighter note, recently read somewhere, I just forgot the overall context, but it is like a technology X, where somebody written saying that oh, even I would not be able to apply for this role because that's a person who created that technology X 4 years back, but the JD says it
10
needs 10
years
years experience in
experience.
that technology,
That's
right?
true. I've seen.
Yeah. So as organization, I think sometimes we also be very clear what we
Very good.
expect, and it's easy to write 50 things in the JD,
Right.
but you'll not be able to find people with all the
Very
skills.
true. Very true. Here's a fantastic question. Do you see, this is from Ganesh, do you see any difference between leaders in startups and leaders in corporates?
Oh, it's I think question very close to my heart because I have played both the roles, and I'll also draw an interesting conclusion in that. But I think the clear difference is leaders in the startup will start from doing the strategy to doing the coding or implementing and doing the customer experience and
Hmm.
then building the teams, motivating people, and same time, like there were days I remember, like work office at the end of the day, put a blazer and run for a investor meeting. So you will do everything, right? So that is where the beauty lies, and it needs a different mindset. But in corporate, unfortunately, I would not say everybody does this, but most of the time, what happens is a lot of leaders think that they are not supposed to do hands-on; they're there to delegate it, and they're there to like get people to work get work done. And one of my pet peeve would have been in some of the organizations, I don't want to take names, people also used to tell me like, why are you working? This should be your team member's job. You are like you're overprotecting your people, right? So
Yeah.
these are some of the things precisely which led me to leave corporate after 16 years actually, right?
No,
So,
very
but
true.
now I see now the things are changing. And even corporates have also started realizing that leader is somebody, yes, should be able to motivate people, create a shared purpose, and make sure that people are doing their best. All those are fine, but at the same time, he should be able to show people or he should be able to relate to people. For example, I'm a technology leader. So I may not be good at React, Angular, all the technologies what my team is working on. That is my team members who are good at. But if I don't understand what are this and why we are using this, then I
Right.
don't think my team members would be able to connect to me. Then, right?
No, very true. I mean, this is one thing, leadership as a quality, I would say, is never going to grow old. I don't care where it is. I don't care whether it's a startup. I don't care whether it's a corporate. I don't care whether it's anywhere in the world, right? My favorite analogy about leadership is really if you take a look at a family, at different points in time, different members of the family actually step up to take leadership, right? They take the lead on something. And that comes from fundamentally only one principle. And that fundamental principle is the good for all. A positive impact for my family, a positive impact for my organization, a positive impact for my, committee, whatever. That's the fundament. That's one of the core, I think, principles that any leader today, any leader anywhere, effective leaders, are known for, right? The second thing I want to
And
also share with my audience is really, think about it. And earlier we used to always think of your career as a pyramid, right? Because you always progressed and moved upwards and so on. But don't ever think of your career like that anymore. Your career is actually a T. And this is something that, research today has actually found to be more effective, that having a breadth of knowledge, but a significant depth of knowledge in any one or a couple of areas is extremely important if you want to take on leadership roles. You can no longer be a leader who's a generalist and a general manager. You got to be really good at something and make that your own in order to be able to actually be able to contribute and add value to an organization. All right, with that, I'm going to jump to another question. Oh, yeah, this is a great one. What are your views on the entire, this is from Sanjeev, what are your views on the entire blockchain and crypto space? So many companies are building tools there. And this is related to another question is this crypto thing just a bubble? I have my thoughts, but I'd like to hear from you. What do you think?
see, I personally feel these are the future. I don't think this is just a bubble which is going to go away in some time.
Right.
So I'll just give you an analogy of maybe, for example, take maps. 15 years back, when I used to go to travel to US from GE, when I started my career maybe 18, 19 years back, I used to feel, wow, maps work so well in US. And I never thought it will work in India. I always used to
Right.
think, with the gullies, what we have, kind of structure, what we have, this will never work. It will work only in US. But if you see today, Bharat, I think you also will agree with me. It works more accurately in India than US or many other places,
Yeah, it does.
right? So similarly, if you think about crypto, blockchain, and all these kind of things, right now, it may still look at little nascent stage, and people may be like still thinking that like where it will go, but these are going to be the future. I think
I'm
it's
completely with
really
you there. I was actually talking to a person in Silicon Valley who actually runs a startup for only cryptos. Anything in the crypto blockchain space. Imagine this is a multi-million dollar, I mean, multi hundreds of million dollar fund that we're talking about, where it's only focused on investments in crypto and related areas. So I think, crypto may not be yet part of the mainstream, certainly not, but early adopters and this is going to happen because I'm seeing a convergence starting to take place even with the metaverse. When you take a look at Meta and you take a look at how you're going to transact in the Meta, what smarter way is there to do it than crypto? And
true.
crypto and using blockchain, obviously, because one right now, at least technologically, one goes hand in hand with the other. So, in my opinion, audience, I got to say that I know that the government is doing a bunch of stuff to try and regulate crypto. Yeah, there has to be some degree of regulation coming in, otherwise it'll just wind up becoming like the Wild West at some point. But crypto is here to stay, and I don't think perhaps, and maybe I'm being the science fiction guy out here, but I wouldn't be surprised if at some point in the future crypto becomes the universal currency. That all you need is a digital wallet with crypto, and you're good to go wherever you want, anywhere in the world, any transaction in the world. Right?
Absolutely. And also, Bharat, these are solving some of the real world problems of the blockchain technology.
True.
Don't think that it's only the crypto, like your product authenticity. There are so many things you can solve using blockchain.
All right. I know who this is. Uh, Ramesh asked this question. Do you think do what you say and say what you do is relevant even today? So this is my line, right? Say what you do and do what you say. So Ramesh is asking the question, is it also relevant today? Thank you, Ramesh.
No, I think, Ramesh, these are some of the, I can call it as like bread and butter of our leadership, or maybe rice dal of our leadership. So you can't stay away with this. And I also remember something reading someone say that you can fool some people all the time, you can fool all people sometime, but you can't fool all the people all the time. So if you don't follow what you're saying, maybe once or twice you'll get through it. But trust me, the younger generation is much more smarter than us.
No,
And
the
their
fundamental,
exposure is much
yeah,
more than what we had. They
absolutely,
they will
absolutely.
not respect us as leaders if we
And
don't.
the fact of the matter is very simple, right, Prashant, and for anybody else listening out there, if you're going to say something and you're going to say that you're going to do something, then do it. This is like, this is what we say is walking the talk. Don't talk if you can't, fulfill it. Don't commit something that you can't do. And that's why this has been, one of my personal credos that I have tried every day to try and live by is say what you do what you say, and how you do it can make the difference in the world. So, with that, Prashant, I would like to thank you so much for coming on our show, on my show, and being the inaugural guest. So, thank you for that. I enjoyed it. I hope you did. And any ending remarks that you may have, please feel free.
Sure. Bharat, I think I truly enjoyed the conversation. And as I mentioned, it has been an honor to talk to you today. And also, as I mentioned in the beginning, only getting some coaching, the formal coaching from you last few months, informal for many years. So that has definitely helped me to
My
come
pleasure.
where,
My
where we
pleasure.
are. The last comment from my side is, see, we all have one life. Let us lead it in the right way, good way, and make some difference to people with whom we work. So let people remember us for as leaders when we work with people. Let us remember that it is not only their career, their overall well-being, 360-degree well-being depends on us. So if we don't treat them fairly, if we don't treat them well in the office, it reflects on their personal life. So think leadership as a responsibility, not as a power or entitlement. And let us lead a meaningful life. With that, I would like
Super.
to close my comments.
Well, thank you very much for that. And thank you for being my guest on the first edition of this show. And audience, I hope you got a great experience. I'm curious to hear from you. You can reach me on my LinkedIn. Do go ahead and send me any of your comments on LinkedIn, any post. I would love to hear from you so that I can continue to work on improving the content and the nature of this programming. We will be having another show coming up, the second edition, which is going to come up on today is the 5th, so the 19th. My guest on that show is going to be Mr. George Epen, who's the group CIO of Petrofac, and he's going to be joining us live as well on the 19th. So stay tuned for the launch and the announcements, and looking forward to seeing you there. Again, Prashant, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure, as always, talking to you. I know we started our day talking to each other, and it's nice to be ending my day also talking to you. So my pleasure is all mine. Thank you so much for coming. And thank you all. See
Thank
you
you.
all. Have a lovely evening. Enjoy yourselves. Bye bye.
Bye.